This is Big Jim from Gun Owners Action League.
And I'm John.
I'm Jeff.
I'm Garet, and this is
Meet
Meet
the
the
Pressers.
Pressers.
Meet the Pressers with Matt Mallory and Klint Necro. Brought to you by Public Safety and Education and the Trigger Pressers Union.
This episode is brought to you by Sabre Red, pepper spray and safety products for all Americans. Next Level Training, makers of CERT training products. Mantis, Mantis X helps shooters suck less. Firearms Owners Against Crime Institute for Legal, Legislative, and Educational Action. Meet the Pressers is also supported by other shows, companies, and our Patreon members. Thank you.
Hey everybody, this is Meet the Pressers. I'm Matt Mallory, one of your hosts, and my other good host here is Klint Macro, my good buddy. And we've got a Goal from out in another East Coast kind of liberal state here that's going to round it out and tell us a little bit about what's going on there. And with Meet the Pressers, we talk about political activism, which is what we're doing now, a little bit of faith, gun gear, gadgets, all that kind of fun stuff. And Clint's going to introduce our guest now. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt, for that very disjointed introduction.
That's how I like to do it.
Well, no, just so everyone knows, we've been kidding around and goofing off before the show started. So this is kind of a continuation of that. But I'm really, really pleased and proud to introduce some of the members of Goal, some of the leadership. We have Jim Wallace. Go ahead and wave. We've got Jon Green. We've got Jeff Strider, and we got Garet Holcomb. These are all men who are fighting the good fight in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Recently, there's been some really, really heinous legislation that has passed one of their houses, and they're battling that. I figured we would talk about that this evening and other things that Goal has going on. Now that I have the mic right now, I would like to say I've worked with some of these guys for quite a while. I've been on the show with Garet before, and I think I met John and Jim.
You want him back on?
Yeah, I think I met you guys at NRA headquarters years ago, and we were like part of a focus group helping to do an update to the basic pistol program years and years ago.
You are absolutely correct.
Yeah, and one of the first times I met Jim was right when I got on the board of directors at Firearms Owners Against Crime here in Pennsylvania, which is kind of like, not that there's ever an equal, but it's kind of very similar to what Goal does. We do that here in Pennsylvania with FOAC, and Jim had asked me, I was like very green, didn't really know much of nothing, not green like John.
I was going to say
but,
that.
and he said, and it came up that we were endorsing a particular candidate for NRA board. And he says, oh, really? Which candidate? And I said, well, I can't really remember right now. And he says, that's probably something that you should find out.
You're going to want to know that.
Yeah, you kind of want to know that.
That's expert advice.
Yeah, so, well, I thank you guys for coming on. Just like 10,000 foot, because there's a bunch of you. If you guys can each do a quick introduction of who you are and what you're all about.
Jim, take it away.
Jim, yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks for the intro. I mean, the initial intro, I thought I was at a Biden press conference, but that's fine. That's
what I was going for.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah, Jim Wallace. I'm the executive director of Gun Owners Action League. I've been, working for Goal. I think December will be 21 years now.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Before that, I was a mailman. So it was a natural transition, from mailman to gun lobbyist, so. But yeah, I've been doing this. I've been executive director for, 15, 16 years. And you can tell by the hair and the beard that it's been a successful journey.
What hair?
He's actually 28 years old.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I started with Goal when I was 7, but yeah. No, it's been an interesting life. It's not something that I ever thought I'd be involved in, because boy, before I did this, no way. Politics, not getting involved. And then I started seeing the things that were happening back in the mid 90s to late 90s and got more and more active. And somebody one time said, hey, come to a meeting. You might learn something. And then it just went downhill from there.
So how long was Goal a thing before you got involved with it?
Goal was established in 1974.
Okay.
There was a ballot question back then to ban handguns throughout Massachusetts. And that was, of course, way before the internet and email and texting. And, a tablet came with a hammer and chisel. So, communication was slow. But people really worked their tails off getting around the state and defeating that thing. But even then we knew, or they knew rather, that, we had to have something permanent here in Massachusetts because the winds were not blowing in the right direction. And as an aside, one of the first times as working for Goal that I went out to speak at a club, I had an older guy get up and start yelling at me for something Mike Yacino did in 1974. And I said, I was in the second grade, for crying out loud. Can you give me a little slack here?
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you for carrying the torch, man. So, Jeff,
bird marks all over me. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Jeff, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Goal?
I'm not an employee or anything. I'm just a volunteer, so I take no responsibility.
For these guys,
about 2018 or 17, 18. I met some people, just through the shooting community, and one of them said, hey, we have this organization, you should come to a meeting. And you'll see kind of a consistent thread with that message, but showed up for one meeting, and by the time that meeting broke, I was the secretary of the board for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
And that just grew into volunteering for a lot of events, showing up for a lot of stuff. And then a couple years back, we had recording equipment. So I said, well, why aren't we doing a podcast? It's a thing now. We should be doing this. And Garet joined the board, and we took it on as a project. And 3 years later, we're just writing up and getting ready to record episode 110.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Yeah, with all 3 listeners. Yep.
Hey.
Yeah,
you have to listen, Jim. You get,
I know, right? You this thread about attending a meeting and suddenly you're put in charge. You ought to see what happens when you miss a meeting.
You get put in charge of more stuff. Yeah, I understand that one too. Jon Green, I've worked with you many times, shared the range and the dirt with you many times.
We've had some good times on the range. We really have.
Yeah. So what got you into Goal?
Yeah, so Goal's Director of Education and Training, been with Goal. I'm their longest running employee at 24 years now. So I started August of 1999 and have been working for Jim since he took the helm, in 2000? You came aboard, Jim, what year?
I came aboard 2000. And
2000, and then
2021? I don't know, I'm getting old.
Yeah, the executive director's position. So basically, I've had many responsibilities at Goal. When I first came on in 1999, took on board the junior small bore riflery. That was the big thing. Let's get more clubs active with junior small bore riflery. Spent many years out at Camp Perry as the state small bore rifle coach. A lot of great memories working with the kids on that one. And then probably for the past 8 years, our flagship course, mass gun law for citizens and law enforcement. They teach thousands of people every year Massachusetts convoluted laws and regulations with regard to all things gun ownership. Also take a ton of questions with regard to, hey, I'm moving, what do I do? Or my mother passed away, she's willed the family guns, how do we help that? So, and then occasionally I get to go out on the range and teach various NRA courses, instructor courses, state liaison for the NRA as far as the TC, along with Rick City. And try to help out those that are willing to help themselves. Awesome job. Love it.
Did you guys catch that, though? Jon actually teaches law enforcement about the gun laws.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Yeah. We have to teach law enforcement about our gun laws.
Yeah, we just got a big class for Massachusetts environmental police officers. We've been teaching them for about 2.5 years now, which is pretty ironic. Here's a state law enforcement agency that's seeking their education with regard to all things gun law and regulation from a nonprofit, not from other state agencies. So that's a feather in our cap. Also speaks volumes to the ridiculousness of Massachusetts gun law.
I think that ridiculousness crosses all borders. We were doing a gun law seminar with FOAC not too long ago, and the sheriff got up and spoke about the licensing process, and he was actually quite wrong about a few points. And it was kind of like, how do you correct that while being somewhat diplomatic? So we've had to educate quite a few law enforcement in our state as well, or our Commonwealth. So you've been there longer than Jim. I did not know that. So have you ever had the title of food and beverage director?
As a matter of fact, this Wednesday, I believe I will be bestowed.
That's right.
Yeah, only at hunting camp. Yeah,
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
But I will say, what happens at hunting camp does not stay at hunting camp.
Well, there you go. There you go.
I expected to see the pinky come up a little bit.
No, that's the other finger. But we
Yeah, they reserve that.
You reserve that for legislative session.
That's right.
Yeah. So Garet, why don't you tell us about yourself, man?
Garet Holcomb. I was actually born and raised in the People's Republic of California.
Oh.
So I'm a transplant. Let's see. Joined Goal. Well, I joined Goal years ago, but I got involved after that guy, Jeff Strider, introduced me to the board. And currently, it's my honor to serve as the president of the board of directors. So,
cool.
But I am another volunteer, just like Jeff, and just like a bunch of the folks on the board who do great work for the organization. Just as an aside, among your accolades, I just want to say that you produced a video for us for our recent Klint. You remember the video you did for us for the event we had over the summer. So I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I wanted to say thank you for that and point that out. So
oh, you're more than welcome. Any way I can help the cause. I kind of look at you guys as like my second home, kind of, and I'm not exactly sure why that is. Maybe just from the hospitality and having worked with you guys over the years a few different times.
Great stuff.
But no, I appreciate that. And
I also I'm the other co-host of the Goal podcast with Jeff Strider. We have a great time of it.
Cool. Yeah, that was a fun podcast to do. We need to do more of those.
Absolutely.
Cool.
So recently you had a really heinous piece of legislation pass through one of your houses in the legislature, correct?
Oh, yes. Yes.
I would say like maybe a 10,000-foot view on that, but also what's the likelihood of it passing the next house, and what would be the best way to combat that? And any listeners that are from Massachusetts, how can they best help to try to stop that from moving to the governor's desk?
Yeah, the next battle in this war is with the Senate. Long and short of it is the Speaker of the House, Ron Mariano, decided that gun control was one of the things he wanted to do before he retired, probably next year. We're not sure. Of course, I offered to help him retire early anytime he wanted to. We could help with the paperwork or something, let me know. But he decided that he wanted this to be part of his legacy. And unfortunately, he put a chairman in charge of the whole process who was a little less than honest about what he was doing and who he was working with. And
a politician being less than honest?
Yeah.
My stars. I did not know that existed.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that he had to play so many different games with the legislation, because the first time he tried to release it, the Senate said, well, we'll look at it later. And he said, 2 weeks later, they said, no, we don't agree with the committee. You're trying to jam this in because that's not where it belongs. So we're not going to agree to anything right now. So that left the Speaker in a lurch, because now he's stuck, because now he's promised the moms who demand attention all kinds of stuff, and now he can't deliver. So he basically played the biggest shell game I've ever seen in my career, period. And even Mike Harris, who's our public policy guy, he was a state house aide for 10 years, and he's apoplectic about the way this was done. They changed the bill number
five times.
And twice in the same day while debating the bill. So when they finally got the bill, what they did, because it never went through the actual process of a bill, they had Ways and Means find a little spending bill that they had just sitting in their committee, added all of this language to it as an amendment, so they didn't have to go through the public hearing process, and then released that part of the bill to the floor for a vote. So
released that part.
Right. Yep.
Not the
Yeah,
whole,
exactly.
not
Right.
the combined bill, but part of it. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a whole new bill number. Yep.
I mean, I respect that, the legislative rules and that change, every year, and that each Commonwealth and state's going to operate a little bit different, but that just seems downright deceptive to
Well,
me.
no, they suspended every rule they had in place.
So-
They make
so-
the rules, so they get to suspend them anytime they want.
Yeah,
to
this
do
is
something
why
they
I'm
want.
absolutely against the Constitutional Convention, by the way, but
So, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Same here.
So the bill went into Ways and Means under a docket number. Oh, by the way, the original one, House docket number 4420,
Mhm.
he sent to Rules Committee, and then it just kind of evaporated. We're not sure what happened. And then suddenly this amendment showed up in Ways and Means. So now it's a different docket number, and it went in as 4607, came out as 4135. And then somewhere along the line, when they were debating this on the House floor, it was 4135-2, which I've never heard of. And then when it was finally voted on by the House, it was 4139. So
Jim, talk about the hearings, how much time we had before the hearing.
the original draft, which was 4420, I got a kudos to the Second Amendment community in Massachusetts. I've never seen them ramp up like they did on this. And it was because they went so far overboard that, even off-duty law enforcement couldn't carry. It banned the shooting sports for anybody under 15. Training, mandatory training, which we do have in Mass, but, you take an NRA course or something equivalent and, you get your license. The mandatory training in the original one, and it's still there in this one, would include, because the state police would have to come up with a curriculum, live fire, de-escalation training, active shooter training, trauma training, mental health evaluation training, and it just goes on. And that's for anybody 15 or up. So it was so bad, the backlash was astronomical. I mean, we had signs. It was actually somebody else who started the lawn sign stuff, and we continued with it. 20,000 lawn signs. We've never done a lawn sign for a bill, and 20,000 lawn signs out there. So they got hammered so bad. The speaker wanted this done by the end of July, because then they go into their summer break for the month of August.
Of course.
And he was getting beat up by his own people. They actually held 2 days worth of closed door meetings, not sessions, just meetings with the House members. And the House members were frustrated because the chairman, who supposedly wrote the bill, couldn't answer too many questions about it, and neither could the speaker. So his name's on it, and you can't answer the questions. And we can't prove this in a court of law, but I'm convinced this was written by some national group, because they only had 2 weeks after the so-called listening tour to draft a bill. So he said, speaker finally had to say to the press, all right, I'm going to put this off until September. So rolls around, we're waiting for a redraft. And so the Thursday before Columbus Day weekend, so holiday weekend, probably in the afternoon, about 2 or 3 o'clock, they released the new draft, 4607. And they announced, we're going to have a hearing on Tuesday, the day after the holiday. So no one has time to notify their employers that they need to take a day off to get into the State House to testify. They did allow, Zoom testimony, but not a lot. And we literally had to ramp up just to look at the bill. It took me 10 hours that Saturday to go through this bill and get a summary up. And the red flag language was so expansive, I had to pull it out of the normal summary and just give it a summary on its own, because of the number of people and things that they could do now, which, by the way, it included now school principals that can file a petition against your kid, and there's no notification to the parents in the language. So a principal could literally report your kid to a court as being dangerous. You wouldn't even know about it till the police show up at your door.
That's why we homeschool. 20
Yep.
years of homeschooling.
God bless you.
So
God bless you, Matt.
Yeah.
Or God bless your wife.
Yeah,
That's true.
that's a whole different story.
She's a saint.
Yeah, that's
She
right.
is.
Yeah, now we're starting a club, honey. You hear that? No. So yeah, it got thrown at us, and then what? Just a few days after the BS hearing, they put it to the floor for a vote, and it was nothing but a series of speeches and trying to violate the rules again, which they managed to do. Thank God the Republicans stood up and said, wait a minute, this is a spending bill. Spending bills have their own set of rules. And then suddenly it wasn't a spending bill because there was no money in it. That's when it shifted probably to H135-2. Who knows? So it was something to see, something to witness, that a Speaker of the House could deny everything that was being said to him, especially from the Mass Chiefs Association. 451 chiefs of police voted that this bill was a violation of constitutional rights and was going to do nothing to prevent crime. And the Speaker just said, well, the chiefs are out of touch then.
Wow.
I think
They're
they got
being
that
activists.
little
Yeah.
backwards.
What do you think about that, Chief?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. So as procedurally shaky as this was, if it does make it through and get to the governor's desk, do you think you would have a case to take it to court because of how it was kind of jankily ran through?
No, you can't sue on the rules. That's the problem
No.
with the legislature. You can't sue on the rules. However they make the sausage is how they make the sausage, and the courts have no authority over that. The bill itself, the Senate's already said they're not even going to take up the House bill. They're going to do their own thing. Could be worse for all we know.
Yeah.
Especially in light of recent events, they're going to use everything they can to make things worse for us.
You mean Israel? Oh no, you got Maine. Yeah, that's right.
Sorry.
Sorry, wrong one.
Yeah,
Thinking
Yeah.
wrong one.
So the thing is, too, everybody, when this started, to a certain extent, the 2A community has gotten spoiled of, oh, just shut up and file a lawsuit and end this nonsense. Well, lawsuits aren't as effective as people perceive them as being. And even if you look at the cases that were sent back after Bruin to California, Maryland, New Jersey, because people always say, well, look at them, they're having success. Really?
Shouldn't have to.
Really? Can you show me where that happened? Because I haven't seen it. None of those cases have gotten back to the Supreme Court or even been ruled on by an en banc court, which means all the justices.
Right.
And they always, point to, I think it's, what is it, Benitez in California?
Saint
But then it's always
Benitez, yeah.
appealed, So,
Benitez.
guys, it's, that's the sad part is they're spoiled because they think lawsuits are the answer. If this actually came to fruition, anything like this, signed by the governor, we've been talking to people all over the country who are experts at this. It may take 5 or 6 different lawsuits because no federal court is going to take up an entire 130-page bill.
Right. You're gonna have to take sections of it and fight little pieces of it. Yeah.
Right. And it could take years. I mean, when Maura Hilly did her thing in 2016, thank God for the NRA's help, we spent 2 years bringing that all the way from the lower federal courts to the Supreme Court, only to have them deny to hear it. And most people don't understand that the Supreme Court gets to pick and choose what cases they hear. So we could spend millions of dollars while we're living under this, because the likelihood of getting a stay or an injunction in the First Circuit, no, ain't gonna happen.
Not here.
So, and Johnny's ghost dog just showed up.
But when
Ghost dogs are dangerous.
a lot of people don't understand, and we've talked about this before on the show, when like Bruin took 7 years to get to the Supreme Court. So you said 2 years, which that's great. That's fast track. And a lot of these cases we're hoping, I mean, there's 5 that have been brought against New York that are sitting at the district court, but they've been sitting there since March, when they heard arguments back in March, and nothing's happened with them since then.
No, and the interesting thing is, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Bruin's not done, because Bruin was sent back to be reheard by the New York court. I don't think they have.
No.
So it's kind of interesting that everybody keeps pointing to this and saying, we won, we won, we won. But I said the day that Bruin came down and everybody's like, we win, it's over. I said, nope, not even close.
Oh
No,
no.
they're-
Now the fight
The beginning.
begins.
Yeah, now they're digging their heels in. Yep.
And I have everybody I've talked to about this. I said, listen, throughout whatever civil rights struggle has happened in the United States, while the court case getting to the Supreme Court is expensive and hard, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Because once you win that case, I mean, look at Brown v. Board of Education. Do you think things suddenly were fine and dandy in the South? Virginia shut their schools down for 2 years so they wouldn't have to comply. You know, it's the Supreme Court case, yes, was very important to our history. But now the hard part happens. And the hardest part of any civil rights struggle is social acceptance. And that is going to be incredibly difficult in states like California and Massachusetts and New York and others. And Bruin really only affected 5 or 6 states. So what we're seeing in all of those states, and certainly here in Mass, which was the worst we've seen, this is nothing but a tantrum.
Yeah.
It's a tantrum about Bruin. It is essentially Governor Wallace of Alabama standing in front of a schoolhouse, not letting kids of color come in.
Yeah.
That's what this is a tantrum.
It's a good
that
analogy.
the court said this is a civil right. You have to start treating it like a civil right. And they refused to.
It's a
Yeah,
good correlation there for sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt. You were going to.
No, just say it's a good correlation that you made there, Jim, in the sense of him standing there and stomping his feet and throwing a temper tantrum. And it's typical that people will say, "Well, just sue him. Just sue. If you don't like how it is, sue him or move out of your state." I love New York. I love living in New York. I love New York. It's got, all the seasons and everything. I don't want to move on to New York. I want the politicians to abide by the Supreme Court's ruling, like they want us to abide by their dictatorship and their laws.
You want the government to follow the law? How dare you?
Yeah. What are you thinking?
I laughed that he said they have all the seasons. What? They haven't eliminated one by the legislature? We have banned winter. No more.
It hurts the climate.
That's right.
Yeah, your statement about how you maybe believe that some of this stuff was written by some type of national organization or some higher power or something that lurks in the background. I totally agree with you on that. If you look at SB1 in Maryland, I'm not in Maryland, but I do a lot of work in Maryland and I consult a lot of instructors there. So I recently had to become somewhat schooled up, certainly not an expert on SB1, and then ultimately an injunction that happened to stop some of the sensitive areas that they put forth through that. And it's very similar looking at the two different bills. And I've seen some of the other stuff that have come up in Pennsylvania that hadn't made it, but it's still worded very much the same way. And you're talking about the court cases. Yeah, court cases. I mean, in Pennsylvania, we've gotten pretty far with a lot of the court cases, but we're certainly jurisdictionally like a very different part of the world than you guys are. And so that's been fortunate for us. But the problem is we have so many gun owners in every state. Like there's millions in every single state. Yeah. And if people would just pay attention to the people they're voting for and vote for those people who are going to protect their rights and who are going to honor their rights and their individual freedoms, we wouldn't have these problems. But they say, Jon Green, he'll take care of it. And Matt Mallory will go talk to the legislators and Klint Macro will write a letter. And so they don't need to get involved. But the problem is we're running out of time. Like this stuff's all coming to a head. And at some point it's just going to be, what's our course of action here? Where do we go from now?
This since February, John, when they started the so-called listening tour. But it's amazing. To this day, we get emails, texts, whatever you want to call it, saying, what the hell is this bill all about? And what are you going to do about it?
What are you going to do about
today?
It?
Yeah. I mean, where you been? There's 650,000 gun owners in Mass. And I'll bet you we're only working on one cylinder because the rest of them still have no clue what's going on. And it's kind of interesting because some of them will bash us. Well, you need to get the word out there better. Okay.
20,000 yard signs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Garrett, Jeff, start calling people. Will you get the phone book out and let's go?
Yeah.
You know, it's posted everywhere. It's talked about everywhere.
Yeah.
But these are people who just dig their head in the sand, or someplace else, and choose not to be part of the solution, but are the first to scream and yell that nobody did anything when it happens. So that's why we have said from the beginning, if necessary, yes, there will be court challenges. Don't let it get that far.
Mm-mm.
I told one guy recently on a Facebook post, and he was complaining about this, get this done. Well, first of all, you can't sue a bill. You have to wait till it becomes law, thus the term lawsuit, not bill suit, even though, but anyway. So it's
Bill suit has a white stain on it, right?
Oh,
No, that's a Bill dress. This is an adult show, folks.
There you go. So anyway, I told him on the post, I said, we're probably going to have to raise several $1 million to challenge that.
Yeah.
And of course, right away, they don't know anything about the process. What do we need to raise millions of dollars? You're just going to waste it. I know an attorney. Yeah, one that's brought a case to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, he'll get money for you.
That's right.
My grandpa's
just call
probate
Saul.
attorney.
Yeah, just call Saul.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a good idea.
He might do a good job.
Yes, he would. So,
yeah, the government is just hell bent on making it impossible for good Americans to be self-sufficient. It's not just the Second Amendment, although that's what we live in. Like, that's kind of our focus. But I mean, everywhere you look, anywhere where a man or a woman, an American, can be self-sufficient, they fight that, and they chip away and they take away your money, your income, your right to do anything for that matter.
Well, here in New York, they're going to be banning gas stoves.
Yeah, I heard that.
They're banning gas stoves.
Yep.
Like any new house being built, you can't have a gas stove. It's got to be all, solar or wind or whatever to power. Are you kidding me?
And isn't it surprising when you see something like that, like somebody starts an initiative, we're going to ban gas stoves, etc., how the media falls right in line and starts publishing stories about how terrible gas stoves are for the environment.
Yeah. Well,
right? Line right up.
They're their henchmen, for sure.
Yeah, it's the propaganda department.
Yeah.
Well,
and
what if I eat a lot of chili and create my own gas? Can I utilize that?
That's organic.
That's
That might
Then
be
you better
illegal.
get your own room there Wednesday, Jimmy.
Yeah. Just think if we could harness that at the state house at every state.
Right? Oh,
Just
Jim
pack
could
it
light
up.
up New York City.
Yeah,
And
we
I
could
will
run.
give you this piece of advice. Don't ever cook a boiled dinner at hunt camp.
Oh,
All that cabbage and everything. Oof, wow.
Oof, yeah, the deer can smell that too, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So instead of a colostomy bag, it'll be a gas bag.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
well, it's and this is the world we live in. We haven't taught our kids critical thinking in probably 50 years. And this was a famous one going back, I don't know, George Bush was still president. Tells you how far back it was. And I spoke.
You're talking HW.
HW.
Okay, HW.
2.0. So the yeah.
No, wait, 2.0.
no,
You're talking
2.0.
1.0.
George, sorry.
George the Second.
The old name.
Oh, so
Let
W,
me check
not
my name tag.
Herbert.
Hold on. So, but I was speaking at Clark University, and the first thing it was huge packed room. I don't know, 200-300 people.
Nice.
Huge packed room, and first thing I said, I introduced myself as a civil rights lobbyist, and it was like 300 Cocker Spaniels.
Ooh.
Heard a kid in the back go, I thought this was about guns. And I said, it's number 2 in the Bill of Rights. If you haven't learned that by now, go up the hill, get your money back, because this ain't working.
Yeah.
Right. So they had this huge screen behind me, a massive screen and a keyboard so I could put talking points. And I said to him, listen, I'm not here to preach to you. I'm not here to convert you. I'm here to have a conversation with you. But in order to do that, let's kind of set the stage. I said, who here believes Second Amendment should be done away with? Only the government, military, and police should have guns. It was like the wave in a stadium, hands up everywhere. Okay,
Wow.
put that up on the board. Only government, military, and police should have guns. Now, remember when this was. I said, well, okay, now having said that, I assume you're all huge George Bush supporters. Dick Cheney, Halliburton, Bush oil, they lied, people died. And I said, okay, put that up on the board. Government kills citizens to cover up lies and get oil. Now let's compare those two statements from the same people. And it was like a massive brain lock. And just to cap it off, I pulled a young lady out of the front row, and I don't remember what her name was now, but I said, what's your name? Lisa. Okay, everybody meet Lisa, one of the bravest young ladies I've ever met. She's like, why did you say that? Because you just said in 2 sentences you're willing to give up your last means of self-defense to a government who's going to kill you for a quart of Quaker State. You're either stupid or brave. I'm just giving you the benefit of the doubt. And then I had him for the rest of the night because you trapped them, you know?
Yeah.
But that's the problem. They don't think through. It's like
points.
the red flag law in Massachusetts. When that was passed, I argued till I was blue in the face because there's kind of 2 parallel paths in the red flag. One is you're looking for people who might be suicidal. The other is homicidal, like this guy in Maine. And let's just take the homicidal for a second. I asked them, all right, somebody's filed a petition against Garet, thinks he's the next mass killer. And the court brings him in, takes one look and goes, oh, yeah, this guy's dangerous.
Definitely.
But through the court process, determines he's dangerous. And you're going to take his gun license away and send him home?
Right.
And they looked at me like,
Yeah.
well, what do you mean?
Back to a job at the airport.
The next killer.
With his Ford
F-150
and
a donut. I mean,
Jimmy, if you look at the red flag language for the latest bill, as a marriage counselor, we could take Garet's marriage license, but not his gun.
So that's
Nice.
I said, wait a minute. Can this person work in a school? How about a doctor?
Yeah.
Can he drive a tractor trailer full of gasoline? And they looked me right in the face and said, well, you can't take away his right to work. Really? How about putting him for evaluation in a mental health facility for 72 hours? How about a dangerousness hearing they use in courts all the time? No, we're just going to take his guns and send him home.
Yeah, so it's about the guns, right?
It's about the guns.
Yeah.
It's about the guns. And the suicide, maybe even worse in mass, because suicide, they call it hanging and suffocation. Suicide by hanging in mass is almost more than guns, drugs, and poisons combined.
Wow.
Really?
Is by far the highest means of suicide in mass. So you have identified somebody you think is suicidal. You bring them into court, embarrass them, make their mental health issues probably exponentially worse. You're going to take their gun license away and then give them a pamphlet and send them home.
Back to their ropes.
Now, here's the kicker. And it tells you everything you need to know. There is no process to petition somebody who isn't a licensed gun owner.
Interesting.
So you could be the most dangerous person in the world.
That's the point.
But
right
if you
there.
don't have a license, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All these things just affect the law-abiding gun owner, and
For
it's a form of racism because they're picking on a particular niche in the group of people. It's not
Well,
everybody. It's just gun owners.
because of who they are, not not for what they do, just simply because of who they are.
Yeah, exactly.
The 3 terms I put to this particular bill, and if you go up on Instagram and Facebook, you'll see it, is arrogance, ignorance, and bigotry. Flat out. That's all this is. It's bigotry against a community of people that are the most lawful, well-vetted people in the Commonwealth. So it's kind of interesting because even in the law, I don't think anybody would ever use it, but if you're a prohibited person as a citizen to own a gun, you can still carry a gun as a law enforcement officer.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I had a meeting with a local sheriff here years ago when he became sheriff, and the ERPO red flag stuff. I asked him. I said, "So have you, in all your 22 years as a sheriff, have you ever had a chance where you could have used ERPO or red flag on for somebody for a case?" And he goes, "Well," and he thought about it, and he goes, "Well, one time." And he told me the story, and basically by the end of the story, I was like, "So you took the guy out of the house, who had guns stored, staged, loaded by multiple windows, and you took him out of the house because he was a danger to have him evaluated. And then what did you do with the guns? He goes, well, we didn't want the guns to be stolen, so we took him and held him until he was released. So how would a VRPO red flag helped in that case? And he's like,
None.
good point. it was, yeah. So 22 years, he thought he had one situation. Turned out that he didn't have any.
Well, there was a red flag that passed in Massachusetts. You guys have one that's in place, right? Has it saved any lives?
There's on average only 12 a year, and the vast majority are filed by law enforcement, which is stupid because the chiefs still have the ability to suspend or revoke a license on a moment's notice.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I tried to tell them. And they said, well, no, this is for family members and friends who want to file a petition. And I said, well, why don't you just go to the police and make a complaint? Not that I support that system, but it's there.
Right.
And they said, well, some of these people might be afraid to go to the police, but it's okay for these people who are afraid of the police to file a petition against my civil rights.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had a red flag pass through the House, and it will very likely never, ever make it through any committees or up for a vote. I'll say very likely because who knows, but
Who knows?
We've got a lot of friends in the Senate. But anyhow, one of the things that is a reason to enact the red flag is if you buy 2 guns. So if you purchase 2 firearms, you are now eligible to be red flagged. If that were to go through and of course, get signed by the governor, it would get signed by our governor, no mistaking about it, but it's unlikely it'll make it through the Senate.
Well,
Guilty.
Yeah.
here's a
Guilty, right?
You buy 2 guns.
Sidebar with stuff that doesn't make sense. This bill is heavy on mandatory serialization and registration of all guns.
Yeah. Have they defined the government agency that would be in charge of that process?
No, Kamala's working on it now. So,
They're going to get to it when they allocate the budget for it.
yeah. Well, by the way, there's no money in this bill to allow the government to do its part. But one of the big things with serialization and registration, and I've asked this of everybody around this issue I've talked to, can you tell me the last time in Massachusetts that a crime was solved that led to a conviction and subsequent jail time by tracing a serial number on a gun?
Valid.
Oh, it's got to be like almost
No.
None.
Yeah.
I haven't found any. The only
Never.
one that told me something was, he said, well, the only way we really use serial numbers is once there's an arrest, we track that as evidence by using the serial number. But it never doesn't solve crime. Because
but that's not what it's about. It's about 20 years from now having a complete database.
Yes. Confiscation leads or registration leads to confiscation. And the whole microstamping thing is a false flag as well. They're saying we want to microstamp it so that we can trace that gun back. The guns already have an identity to them. You can already get forensics off the serrations on a bullet based on the lands and the grooves in the barrel, based on the bore. I actually had one of the local forensic girls shoots guns and actually does the forensics on the firearms here locally in Syracuse for the county. And she took the class to get her pistol license, and we had a really good conversation. And she said that she goes, we do it already. We don't need microstamping. It's a fingerprint. The gun and the ammo already have a fingerprint when that round that projectile goes down through that bore. So
she doesn't know anything about hot lapping, does she?
or ghost guns.
Yeah.
No fingerprints on a ghost.
So many of these laws, though, it's we get into minutiae and we think, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense. And it actually doesn't make sense, but it's not really supposed to, because the point is not the technology. The point is not, the point is never safety. The point is either imposing a chilling effect, increasing the barriers to entry, making sure that we have generations that are less exposed to firearms and the Second Amendment. And, it's a long game to me.
It's one more way that someone who wants to can criminalize the law-abiding citizen. With a detail.
And if anything needs microstamping, it should be Joe Biden's fingers. So figure out what he's been touching all these years.
Hey, now, let me ask you a question. Now, this might be a little bit of a sidebar, maybe not. Okay, if you have been doing nothing in your adult life, but public service.
Politician.
How the fuck do you become a gazillionaire? How does that happen?
Isn't that weird?
How does
Look
that
at the
happen?
Hey, look at the Obamas. They
Yeah.
they were college professors before he was president,
Yeah. And they become
Literally, college
gazillionaires. How
professors.
does that happen?
and now they're
Inside trading much?
multi-billionaires. They have
Oh,
a huge mansion in Martha's Vineyard, which apparently they didn't want to share.
Speaking of Martha Stewart, right? I mean, that's inside trading, right? I mean, how else you get inside information?
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about her centerfold and Sports Illustrated or whatever. Yeah, now we're in a rabbit hole. No.
I don't need that.
Martha Stewart's a good-looking woman, I tell you.
Yeah.
Was.
Well, the sad thing is that you don't see anybody in Congress leave poor. You
No.
don't.
No.
No. And that's why I'm a huge opponent of
Term
term
limits.
limits.
Yeah.
That's not the answer.
No.
Part-time legislature.
Yes.
Here.
That's
You
actually
got
better.
30 days to get your business done and go home. That's it. 30
Yeah.
days.
Well, back in the founding of the country, it was a not a rite of passage, but it was like you were donating your time, you were putting your business on hold. Nobody could afford to do that, and they'd go and they'd be a public servant. They do it as a public service, and then they'd be done, and then they'd leave and go back to the way they lived.
Yeah,
It was
like
an
the
honorable
first time-
thing.
Years
now
ago,
it's a
the first
career
time I
option.
got called for jury duty, and I was a self-employed carpenter, and I said, in the manual, it said self-employed persons must reimburse themselves.
Write yourself a check. Write yourself.
Yep.
Okay.
That's kind of like that's what it's like when you volunteer for a state level pro gun organization, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I knew when I got my first job coming out of the military, I was mowing lawns at the cemetery just to make some cash. And I had to fill out the state tax form, and it said, if blind, check here.
That's the government for you right there.
Oh goodness.
I thought you had somebody else check there, but that's okay.
Yeah.
No, it's just the things I've seen in my tenure doing this, and the garbage I've heard from people. Even there's a law in Mass where you cannot be in a public way with a rifle or shotgun that's not enclosed in a case. And when that was passed, decades.
What's a public way?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, fine. Yeah, what's a public way?
But I met with a woman who put that in the bill, and she said, well, if we have some psycho heading to an abortion clinic with an Uzi, we don't want him to cause a panic. So you want him to get to the clinic before anybody knows he's got an Uzi? Well, yeah, if he's carrying it around in public, it's going to cause a panic.
Logic.
Yeah.
Logic.
Oh my head.
Did you tell her that Tide Pods taste lovely?
It was way before the Tide Pod thing.
Yeah, but they kind of look like candy corn. So,
Man.
Some people's kids, I tell you.
Right. Isn't that true?
Right.
Jeez.
I have a good friend that used to say people who eat marbles shouldn't be alive long enough for their kids to eat marbles.
Now that's a t-shirt right there.
Yes.
There's
So-
too many anti-Darwin devices in the world.
Yeah,
Very
that's
true.
So what people watching this show in Mass or anywhere else in the world or in the country for that matter, what can they do to help you guys do what you're doing?
They got first thing I'm going to say, stop with these click here stuff. Click here to contact your legislator.
Yeah.
Are completely ineffective, period. Even form letters, they get the first three, the rest go in the trash.
Yeah.
You've got to take, and this is coming from people I know that are friends. If you can't take 5 minutes of your time to jot a paragraph to me, you don't have to get into detail. Just tell me, give me two things that you hate and then ask me to look at the rest. But if you can't take 5 minutes to write a letter to me, it's not that important to you. It isn't.
Yeah.
And we get this all the time. When's Go going to set up one of these things? Do your job. We are doing our job because we know what works and what doesn't work. We know firsthand. Mike Harris, the public policy guy, hates those things because the people that are hitting click here think they're being active, think they're being an advocate. They're not. They think they're doing their part. They're not.
Yeah.
You cannot win. And John, Garet, Jeff, how many times have I said this? No civil rights fight in U.S. history has won was ever won
been won.
by staying home
Yep.
and pitching behind the keyboard.
Yep.
Got to get
1000%.
out. You have to make your face and your voice seen and heard, period. And kudos to a lot of the people here in Mass.
Yep.
I had legislators tell me, Jim, I've heard from people I didn't even know existed in my district.
That's great.
So that tells you that's what's effective. And so on the local level, don't worry about click here. Stop calling for rallies. Get together, figure out your House rep. This is state now, not Congress. State rep, your state senator, have their contact information handy and reach out to them personally.
Yep.
Whether it's a phone call, whether it's a local office hours that they all seem to have on Fridays because they don't go into the state house. Find out where they are. Talk to them about this thing. Bring 3 or 4 friends, especially the ladies out there. Kudos to the women in the 2A community in Massachusetts. They have been absolute fireballs on this stuff. So that's what you need to do. Really get active. Don't just click a button and think you've done it. No, you haven't. You've actually harmed us because you've wasted your time and theirs.
Yeah.
So
Do you have
get off your ass and get it done?
Right.
Do you have resources on the Goal website on how people can find like contact information and stuff for the legislature?
Yep. If they go to the homepage and scroll down, the first thing you'll see is our statement on the Maine massacre. And then you scroll down and there's a link to the page that has our summary, has the red flag summary and other information. There's also help about how to write a letter to your legislator and, a whole host of stuff. We've carved down what was there because the original fight was so expansive that we had so much information and links. People were like, oh, I'm overwhelmed. So we've carved things down and we're going to centralize things a little bit more to get people to understand and easily. We put out the summary of this bill. It was 8 pages long. So I just did another bullet point abbreviated summary, and that's still 102 page and a half long. So it's this is also the first time, guys, that when the original bill hit back in June, we went to work on it as soon as it came out on a Monday. The entire staff was working on this. By Wednesday afternoon, I said, actually Wednesday noon, I said, stop. We're done. And, a couple of statements were, well, wait a minute, we might be missing stuff. Does it matter? We've never seen anything like this. And we couldn't what we call redline it for the membership because what they did was they literally rewrote every section of gun law. So even the stuff we thought we knew, you couldn't refer to anymore. So the general membership wouldn't understand. And the reason I did the summary different for this new one is I did it by subject matter with just bullet points. So if you look under junior shooters, there'll be bullet points. If you look under what's an assault weapon, there'll be 50 bullet points. But yeah, it's just amazing. But you got to educate yourself. You got to get involved. You got to get your friends involved. Don't assume you're a friend who's a gun owner knows anything about this.
Yeah.
Because the likelihood is
Absolutely.
So true.
Yeah. And it'll mean more to that person if a friend of theirs talks to them about it, even than if they maybe even see one of us talk about it, right? That personal touch, having their valued neighbor, their friend next door, their relative talk about how this is affecting them and potentially could affect them negatively.
One of the great things, and call it what you will, whoever ran Barack Obama's campaign, they were phenomenal at macro reach, but micro touch. They had massive campaigns on whether it's a TV or the internet or social media, but there was always somebody on the street corner shaking your hand. That's the important piece right there. And I still, to this day, I'll go to a gun shop and people will come in and I'll say, hey, do you know about this bill? Oh yeah, I saw it, but that's never going to pass. It's just another joke. Joke's on you.
Just wait.
Yeah.
That 20-foot great white shark's about to go dun-dun, so
it's a lot of people. It's a lot easier for people to live in bliss. And then on top of that, a lot of the individuals like ourselves are busy in everyday life where, on the other side of the fence, they've got people getting bussed in to do these things and get paid to stand there on that street corner and shake hands and tell them about bills. So it's a tough battle on our part to get people active and get people doing stuff that's outside of their 9-to-5 job and whatnot. But
well, the other thing too is that, we've had this crowd and we had a group start up years ago in 2014 and 16 after we had to do some hard work. It just don't comply crew. And I remember when they showed up at a hearing and they had this, I will not comply. So I went over to one of the guys and I said, "Oh, wow, do you have a license to carry?" "Yep." "You're complying."
Yeah,
You're already complying.
Yeah.
So what are you saying? You're going to look like an idiot.
Yeah.
The other thing with this is there's a difference between I will not comply. This bill, you won't be able to.
Right.
There's no way the average person's going to be able to comply with this law.
If you own a gun and you breathe, you're violating some aspect of that.
You're screwed.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, you're right about that. I will not comply. When Virginia had their battles about 3 years ago, that kind of migrated into Pennsylvania with a particular national organization that has 3 letters in it. It doesn't start with an N.
Yeah.
Ends with an A though. They started pushing these sanctuary county movements and stuff. And we have strong preemption in Pennsylvania. And Firearms Owners Against Crime, we came out, we said, no, we don't support this sanctuary county stuff because it violates state preemption. And we've been winning in the courts because of our preemption. So you want to pass a resolution or like a feel-good statement and nail it to the tree, like we support that, but I'm not gonna, support a local municipality passing a law that supersedes state law. Like that's not a thing. But so we went back and forth, and I was accused of being anti-gun, which really, really kind of hurt. Pisses you off, as you guys all know how that feels, But when Governor Wolf shut down all the FFLs during the whole government overreach and lockdown phase of COVID, I kept saying, "Where's that sanctuary thing? How are you going to go open up your FFL? Is your county commissioners going to do that?" No, they're not. So we were able to stave that off. But yeah, you're right. They're kind of feel-good measures, and people get this kind of beat their chest kind of thing, and they feel like they've done something because they've got to let off some steam. But the problems are still there at the end of the day. So I applaud everything you guys are doing. You guys have been working nonstop this last year because of the fight that's on your hands. I know how hard I've been working here in Pennsylvania. It can't be but a fraction of what you guys are doing. And so I really appreciate what you're doing, because what you're doing there matters to all of us. Even though we don't live in Massachusetts, it's going to catch up no matter what. And you're setting the stage for the battles that come.
Yeah, we're not giving up. We're not moving. I'm Scottish, I always joke with the guys.
You don't say.
When you see me on the Golden Dome with my blue face paint and kilt, it's on. I put out big money, by the way, not to wear a kilt. So
I was going to say
that was just by the staff.
Yeah, that was just by the staff.
We all signed a petition, Jim.
That's right.
You ought to start leaking some photos, and you might raise enough money for the next court case with that.
That's right. That's right.
Jim's OnlyFans page.
Yeah, OnlyFans. Yeah.
Was he? But is he good with a bagpipe? That's the question.
That could go in a really bad.
Hey, I'm up for employee review. I'm not saying anything.
So I'm just gonna.
Yeah. Well, how can I bring this back to Bill Clinton
on the park bench and walk away from that one? So, well, I will say, Clint, and you kind of hit on this a little bit too. And I'm not going to bash any particular organizations, even though I want to. National, state, local. Just because you're first doesn't mean you're right. There are so many organizations that want to be the first to put something out, that want to be the first to file a lawsuit, that want to be the first to be in front of the media. And one of the things I've learned throughout my career, sometimes the hard way, is be deliberate, be careful, and make sure you're correct what you're putting out. Because we're not trying to, if you've noticed, all the alerts and stuff we put out, it's not a fundraising effort. We haven't actually asked for anything. Mm-hmm. We will if this goes to court. But most of the organizations that want to be first are only raising money and thumping their chests.
Yeah.
I teach this at college, believe it or not. Chest thumpers make headlines. Thinkers make history.
Nice.
Yeah. National Association for Gun Rights. That's another one. We sued the city of Pittsburgh in 2019, and they came in and did an email campaign. We're fighting for your rights. At the time, and even now, they don't actually have anyone that has an office in Pennsylvania.
No.
So, but good people will, they're like, oh, let me help. And they'll $10, $20. And then, here we are, scrimping and scraving to keep gas in our car to ride back and forth to Harrisburg to fight,
Yep.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about. So everybody watching.
They did it to us. They did it to us in this fight.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They announced, they sent out a campaign. We're working on the ground with Gun Owners Action League. I don't know what ground you're on, but it ain't in Massachusetts. So, but they also screwed up too when they filed an assault weapons lawsuit without even talking to us, because there were very specific reasons we weren't doing it again. And in coordination with other national groups, not doing it on purpose until a few things were put in place nationally. And of course, they charged in, filed another suit, which will be shot down by the First Circuit just so they can make headlines and make money.
And it sets bad precedent, man. And
we'll be stuck holding the bag.
Well, and it's a waste of money. It's a waste of resources. It's a waste of time, and frustration gets added up for sure. We had the same issue in New York prior to the Concealed Carry Improvement Act, CCIA, going into effect. One of the national organizations filed a lawsuit. Well, the judge threw it out because they didn't have precedent. They didn't have anybody that was egregied. They didn't have anybody that actually been affected by the law.
Oh, standing.
Standing. So therefore, they judge threw it out, and they reapplied it, and then it did obviously go through. But all that time and money and energy that was wasted putting it forth when they didn't, they got the cart before the horse.
Oh,
so
this stuff has to be planned. It has to be planned carefully. And that's, what Jim and the staff are really, really good at. I mean, they're 5 people in the office. You guys are doing the work of 20 people. And it's planning this stuff out and thinking strategically, because it's not just about throwing lawsuits out. It's not just about, organizing that stuff. You have to have the long view. And
I think the negative on the other side, and a positive for them, negative for us, is that I think, Jim, you alluded to it, that they've had this stuff in the waiting. They've had this planned out. CCA here in New York, they had it. I know for a fact. I met with politicians here in New York back during before COVID, and they made reference to Gabby Gifford, the Gifford Foundation. Like, we'd have to check with the Gifford Foundation on that. I'm like, the first time I heard that, I'm like, the Gifford Foundation, what does that have to do with New York law? What does that have to do with you? Why do you got to go to ask them something? You're the politician. And they're like, yeah, we put everything through their organization first. And I was dumbfounded when they said that. And I guarantee that's exactly probably the same organization that wrote the CCA, because you can't tell me in 1 month's time they're going to go from the Bruin decision in June to New York State enacting CCA in 1 month, where they basically put this law to vote.
They're just that efficient.
Oh,
Matt.
yeah.
Oh, the chairman,
Never.
for what? I don't know how many months they had that listening tour.
It was while it was going on.
Said, we have no preconceived notions of this bill. We have nothing in writing yet. 2.5 weeks later, there's a 142-page bill.
No way.
Yeah.
And while the listening tour was going on, the so-called good faith listening tour, there were photo ops with Gabby Giffords and the chairman.
But the other thing too, we kind of get from people who aren't used to this fight, and I got it at the big celebration that we had, which Klint, you did that video, if you remember. Awesome. One of the questions I got from the crowd was, who's working with you nationally and what's your strategy? Well, the first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. And they're like, well, we need to know your strategy. No, you don't.
No, you don't.
And the other thing is, if I told you what my strategy is today, it may be totally different tomorrow.
Yeah.
What did Bruce Lee say? If water in the cup, become the cup. The cup's going to change to a vase. You got to become the vase, So it's a fluid strategy. You just have to have all these things in your head of what's possible, what can happen, how can we use our abilities to the best. It's constant, nonstop adjustment. But that's what this game is, and sadly they consider it a game.
They do. Well, thanks, gentlemen. It's definitely been awesome to have you on. Why don't we real quick do a closeout? Each of you guys can kind of any last thoughts, and we'll start
Jeff's
with you.
Mike even on?
I was just going to say,
no, I'm here.
Yeah,
we're
Jeff
listening to the Jim show. We're listening to the Jim show.
We'll start with you, Jeff.
Yeah, and make sure too, before you kick it off to the next person, say your Instagram, Facebook, email, or website, whatever. Yeah,
stalk you.
Oh, I avoid social media like the plague. I'm one of those people. It's not good for me. Too many problems.
Jeff's a smart one.
Yeah, right. The youngest one and the smartest one.
It'll be P.O. Box 17. Self-addressed stamped envelope to P.O. Box 17.
6 to 8 weeks for
yeah, I help out a very little bit with the podcast social media stuff, but otherwise I tend to stay off as much as I can.
Dear Facebook, ting 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 ting. Exactly. Yeah.
Really, I mean, it's so for me, it's, at the end of the day, the thing is the people. The people have to participate. They have to get involved, and it's keeping the continuity of liberty alive. Because, like Garet said, the long-term plan that they're looking at is to just phase out the gun owner.
Yeah.
And they're treating it just like the campaign to end smoking and everything else. They're going after your kids. They're using the media. They have their own propaganda wings, and they're trying to make being a firearms owner like a taboo thing that you're not supposed to talk about in polite company. And that's why we do the podcast. It's, I do it because we need to have more pro Second Amendment voices out there, even if just to say, hey, this is a totally normal thing. We're all good people. We all want the best for everybody. We all want to live in a safe world, but at least we have a realistic understanding that you have to be an active participant in that safety plan. So, for all the people out there or the people that listen, it's, maybe take a Saturday, even if it's just one, and take someone new to the range, or go talk with your friends and say, hey, listen, yeah, I shoot and you should come with me sometime. That's how, to me, you really fight the long game, is by keeping this tradition alive.
Well said.
Amen.
Hearts and minds. You didn't say anything for the last hour. Wow.
At least he didn't fall
asleep.
Hearts
and minds. Yeah.
Garet, take it away.
All right. Well, so from my perspective, I do handle most of the social media stuff for the podcast. So I'll give the details. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/goal podcast. Wow, let me try that again. Facebook at facebook.com/goal podcast MA. We have a YouTube channel at the Goal Podcast. And of course, there's the Goal Twitter at Goal Update. We release episodes every 2 weeks. Recently, the big topic of conversation has been this nonsense, naturally. But we do try to keep a diversity of topics with, history and nerd stuff and law and so forth. So give us a listen if you feel so inclined. Personally, I agree with everything that Jeff said. I live by the maxim, that advocacy is critical, but it's not just contacting your legislature, right? You have to be able and willing to contact your friends, like we kind of talked about a little bit earlier. That's also advocacy, getting the word out. Bring your friend to the range, like Jeff said. Hearts and minds. We're only going to win this fight by winning hearts and minds. So Amen. There it is.
Well said.
Yeah, very nice.
John.
Well, on the subject of advocacy, gentlemen, as I like to say, listen, advocacy is not putting a lawn sign, in the front of your yard. It is getting out and meeting with your state rep, a phone call. I get it. Nobody wants to, one-on-one with a state rep and their aide, right? Invite a couple of your friends, invite family, but they have to know your name. They have to know who you are, and thank them. When we had, Jimmy, 28 or 38 Dems and reps vote against the bill, right? Mm-hmm. We need to thank those folks. Personally, I reached out to my state rep, Kim Ferguson, longtime friend. Hey, Kim, I want to thank you for voting against that. And she replied something to the effect, yes, and we're going to work on the Senate next, right? So advocacy, they need to know who you are, right? And you need to know who they are. Thank them when they've done right by you and correct them when they have done wrong by you. And lastly, listen, I just want to give a shout out. Jeff and Garet are such solid individuals. They're too humble. The work that they do above and beyond the podcast and the goal board. Garet, you're president of the Mansfield Fish and Game Club?
Vice president. Yep.
Yeah, vice president. Right. So you do all the work other than the president, right? And Jeff's constantly volunteering. I don't know how many women on target events he's done with Gold. He's also a big toe with the Pink Pistols. This is what it's about. Not only do they talk advocacy, it's in their lives, it's in their actions. So hey, I'm blessed to have you guys as brothers working for Jimmy. Just a great staff, and I appreciate what you guys do. With regard to getting the word out. Klint's been one of my mentors for years, and Maddie, you and I have broken bread together. It's a good community, and I thank God that we are who we are.
Nothing like the gun community, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jim, round us out, sir.
Well, I will say I'm going to talk to some people about Jeff being on every Women on Target, but we'll go from there.
I was wondering when he said that. Not on social media, but on Women on Target.
The interesting thing is I always caveat this with, it's always weird for me to say the word proud, but sometimes there's no other adjective to use. But I'm so proud of the Second Amendment community for standing up. Those who sat by, okay, hope you can look your kids in the face if this happens.
So true.
And your grandkids. The women in the 2A community. Now, history will tell us, guys, if we were smart to teach them how to shoot better than us. But that being said, it's just a phenomenal outpouring. And I will tell you firsthand, the staff has taken some serious abuse from people, whether it's email, whether it's social media, text, phone calls, screaming at them that we're not doing anything. And it's hard for some people to get up in the morning facing that battle when they know everybody's against them. But they're not. If they're just a little bit more vocal. 90% of the people have been, you go, Goal's doing a great job, the staff's doing a great job, with what you have to work with. It's a fight of honor. And I am so honored myself to be at the helm. I don't think I have much more hair to lose, or gray hairs, but I'll continue to do it as long as I can. And the Goal staff knows, probably your listeners wouldn't know. A year and a half ago, I died. I saw the other side. They brought me back.
Wow.
I know I'm on the right path. So now I got nothing to lose. Have fun.
Amen.
Let's go get them.
Yeah. Amen. Awesome.
Harumph.
Clint, since I did such a horrible job of bringing us in, why don't you do a great job bringing us out?
Oh, that's, after I said that, I thought, oh man, I just upset my co-host. Yeah. Well, it's always a pleasure to spend the evening with Matt and with all my friends here. I've got to work with all of you at some point in time. Jeff, actually, now that I think about it, we have worked together. Weren't you when we did the podcast at Mansfield?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So I apologize for not mentioning that at the beginning.
No worries, man.
So, I look forward to helping you guys any way we can here with our show, or anything I can do to help the cause. And I look forward to seeing success in Massachusetts and in New York and in Pennsylvania as we gain back some of the liberty lost over the years and help set the Constitution in the forefront. And let's make sure we protect the individual rights and liberties of all Americans, whether they own a gun or not.
Right on.
And the only reason they like to call the Constitution a living document is so they can kill it.
Well said.
Yeah, well said. Well, with that said, go with God, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Have a good night.
Take care.
There's a lot of sponsors that make this show possible, like Mantis.
Make sure you check them out and give them your business.
This episode is brought to you by Saber Red, pepper spray and safety products for all Americans. Next Level Training, makers of CERT training products. Mantis. Mantis X helps shooters suck less. Firearms Owners Against Crime Institute for Legal, Legislative, and Educational Action. Meet the Pressers is also supported by other shows, companies, and our Patreon members. Thank you.
Thanks for watching or listening to our show. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share. Click that little bell thingy so you know when the next episode's uploaded. Support us on Patreon. come to one of our classes. Host us to come to you and do one of our classes at your location.
And until next time,
Adieu.
Thank you for watching Meet the Pressers.